Welcome back to Harborview Cove Mysteries. I'm Vera Vining, and tonight's story continues The Lighthouse Keeper's Secret. In Episode 2, questions begin to surface. Old histories refuse to stay buried, and what seemed like a simple theft starts to feel like something far more dangerous. So get comfortable. Let the world slow down and return with us to the quiet streets of Harborview Cove. This is Episode 2. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the seaside page, casting golden rectangles across the worn wooden floors. Nora stood behind the counter, watching dust motes dance in the light, but her mind was elsewhere. Back in the library, staring at that empty display case. She'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Bee's face when Lucas had questioned her. The flash of something. Guilt? Fear? Before Bee had composed herself and answered calmly, Nora had known Bee Sullivan her entire life. The woman had read her stories when she was 6, recommended her first mystery novel at 10, helped her research colleges at 17. But last night, for just a moment, Bee had looked like a stranger. "You're doing it again." Maeve's voice cut through her thoughts. The Irish woman emerged from the tea room, wiping her hands on her apron, deep green today, embroidered with tiny Celtic knots. "That thing where you stare at nothing, and I can practically hear the gears turning in your head." Nora blinked, focusing on her friend. Maeve's red hair was pulled back in a bun, a few rebellious curls escaping around her face. She looked tired too, purple shadows under her green eyes. That makeup couldn't quite hide. "Did you sleep at all?" Nora asked. "Pot, meat kettle." Maeve crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. "I stayed up watching a true crime show and worrying about you getting involved with this case." "Sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be honest." Maeve's expression softened. "You're going to investigate this properly, aren't you? Not just leave it to the young officer, who barely knows which end of a magnifying glass to look through." Nora couldn't help smiling at that image. Lucas seems competent enough. Lucas seems like he just graduated from the police academy and thinks everything in real life works like it does in training manuals. Maeve raised an eyebrow. "You, on the other hand, have read every mystery novel ever written and actually know these people, their histories, their secrets, their motives." "I don't know everyone's secrets," Nora protested, but even as she said it, she knew it wasn't quite true. Small towns were like that, layers of gossip and history, and things everyone knew, but nobody talked about. She'd been away for 25 years, but the foundation of Harborview's social architecture hadn't changed. The same families, the same feuds, the same old stories told and retold, until they became mythology. Maeve studied her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. Then she nodded, decision made. "Right. So what's the plan? Besides standing here looking troubled and forgetting to open the shop on time." Nora glanced at the clock. 8:47. They usually unlocked at 9. "I thought I'd start with Marcus," she said slowly, the plan forming as she spoke. "The Harbor Cafe is always busy at breakfast. People talk. And Marcus, he's been here forever. If anyone knows about the founding families and their secrets, it's him." "Good thinking." Maeve headed back toward the tea room. "I'll handle things here. We're not expecting any groups today, and the Saturday morning regulars can pour their own tea if they're desperate. Go, investigate. Try not to get arrested for interfering with official police business." "Nora." Maeve paused in the doorway, her expression suddenly serious. "Be careful." Whoever took that log had a reason, and if that reason is worth stealing for. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The Harbor Cafe occupied a prime corner location overlooking the water, its large windows offering views of the bobbing boats. And the lighthouse in the distance. The building was old, pre-revolutionary, Marcus liked to say, though that was probably an exaggeration, with exposed brick walls and nautical decor. That managed to be charming rather than kitschy. This morning it was packed. Nora paused in the doorway, hit by a wall of warmth and sound, and the heavenly smell of coffee, and fresh-baked pastries. Every table seemed occupied. Fishermen grabbing breakfast before heading out, tourists getting an early start, locals settling in for their Saturday morning ritual of coffee and gossip. Marcus Chen worked behind the counter. With practiced efficiency, his gray-streaked black hair pulled back in a short ponytail, his apron somehow still pristine. Despite the breakfast rush, he was 48 but moved like a much younger man, all economical grace and quick smiles. He spotted her immediately. "Nora, hang on." He finished pulling an espresso shot topped a cappuccino with perfect foam art and slid it across to a waiting customer. Then he waved her over. "Counter seat just opened up. Grab it before Mrs. Patterson stakes her claim." Nora slipped onto the stool, grateful. From here, she could see most of the cafe. And, she noted, Marcus could see her. Strategic positioning. He was smarter than people gave him credit for. "Coffee?" he asked, already reaching for a mug. "Please, black." "You and me, both." He poured, then leaned his elbows on the counter, his voice dropping. "I'm guessing this isn't just a social call. You're here about the log. No point in pretending otherwise. You heard." "Nora, sweetheart, everyone's heard. It's the biggest thing to happen in Harborview since—" He paused, something painful crossing his face. "Well, in a long time." She sipped her coffee, perfect as always, and chose her words carefully. "You were at the exhibition last night. What did you think of Dr. Webb's presentation?" Marcus's hand stilled for just a moment on the counter. Then he grabbed a cloth and began wiping down the espresso machine, giving himself something to do. "Thought it was interesting. History, you know. The founding families built this town. Nice to remember that." But nothing. Just history. His tone was carefully neutral. Nora waited. She'd learned this technique from every mystery novel she'd ever read. Sometimes silence was more powerful than questions. People felt compelled to fill it. Marcus filled it. "Look," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "I don't like to speak ill of the dead, or the long dead, or whatever we're calling people from 1823. But those founding families? They weren't saints. Everyone acts like they were these noble pioneers, but—" He shook his head. "Money came from somewhere. This town got built somehow. Not all of it was pretty." "The log might have had evidence of that." "I don't know what the log had. I didn't steal it." He met her eyes directly, and she believed him. Marcus Chen was many things, but he was a terrible liar. "But I'll tell you this. If there's something in that log that makes certain people uncomfortable, I'm not surprised someone wanted it gone." A customer called for a refill. Marcus grabbed the coffee pot, giving Nora an apologetic look. She nodded. She could wait. While he worked, she observed, the cafe was Marcus's domain, and he ruled it with quiet competence. He knew everyone's names, their usual orders, asked after their families. When he returned, He brought her a blueberry scone she hadn't ordered. "On the house," he said. "You look like you haven't eaten." She hadn't. The scone was warm, the blueberries fresh, the crust perfect. "Marcus, this is amazing. My grandmother's recipe. She—" He stopped, the pain flashing across his face again, deeper this time. "Marcus," she said gently, "what happened to Michael?" His jaw tightened. For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he disappeared. 30 years ago this summer, down at the harbor one night, gone the next morning. They searched, but he made a helpless gesture. Harbor Patrol figured he fell in. Accident, case closed. But you don't think so. I don't know what to think. He picked up the cloth again, polishing the already clean counter. Michael was a good swimmer, knew these waters better than anyone, and that night. He stopped himself. What about that night? Marcus looked around again, then leaned closer. He'd been acting strange. Nervous. Said he'd found something out. Something important. Said he needed to confirm it first. Then he was just gone. Nora's heart was beating faster. Did you tell the police? Of course I did. They said I was imagining things, trying to make sense of an accident. Maybe they were right. But his tone suggested he didn't believe that at all. Nora, why are you asking about this? Because I think it might be connected, she said honestly. I don't know how yet, but... Miss Hartwell? She turned. Lucas Bennett stood behind her in uniform, looking official, and slightly irritated. Officer Bennett, she said coolly. Coffee? I need to speak with you. His tone was professional but firm. Outside, please. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Nora sighed, left money for the coffee and scone on the counter, and followed Lucas out onto the sidewalk. The morning was beautiful. Cool breeze off the water, spring sunshine warming the cobblestones. Lucas looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. You need to stop. Stop what? Investigating. Questioning witnesses. Interfering with official police business. He crossed his arms. I know what you're doing, and it needs to end. Nora bristled. I'm having coffee with a friend. You're interrogating suspects in an active investigation. I didn't realize Marcus was a suspect. Everyone who was at that exhibition is a person of interest. Lucas's voice rose slightly. Then he visibly controlled himself. Look, I understand you're curious. You're new back in town. This is exciting. You probably think it's like one of those mystery novels you sell. I don't think this is a game. Nora interrupted, her own temper flaring. Someone stole an important historical document. From our library. That matters. And I'm handling it. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're going by the book and missing what's actually happening. Lucas's jaw tightened. I've been trained. I've lived here. There's a difference. She softened her tone slightly. Lucas, I'm not trying to undermine you. But I know these people. I know this town. I might see things you miss. Or you might contaminate evidence, interfere with witnesses, or get yourself hurt. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Please, Nora, just leave this to me. Okay? She wanted to argue, but looking at his face, young, earnest, genuinely concerned, she found herself nodding instead. Okay. Relief flooded his features. Thank you. I appreciate your cooperation. He started to walk away, then paused. And Nora? If you do notice anything at all, you can tell me, officially, the right way. I will, she promised. He nodded and headed toward his patrol car. Nora waited until he'd driven away, then turned back toward the harbor. She'd promised to leave it to him. She hadn't promised to stop investigating. Captain Roy Fletcher's boat, the Restless Wave, was docked at the far end of the harbor away from the tourist vessels and fishing boats. It was a working boat, scarred and weathered exactly like its owner. Roy himself sat on the dock, mending a fishing net, with the kind of patient expertise that came from decades of practice. He was 60, built like an old oak tree, solid, unmovable, weathered by time and elements. His gray beard was neatly trimmed, and his blue eyes were sharp as he watched her approach. Nora Hartwell, he said, without looking up from his net. Captain Fletcher. She stopped a respectful distance away. Roy had never been much for small talk or invasion of personal space. Beautiful morning. I. He tied off a knot, examined his work, then finally looked at her. You hear about the theft? She shouldn't have been surprised, he knew. Roy knew everything. That happened on or near the water. What makes you say that? Young Officer Bennett was by earlier, asking questions. Now you're here. Don't take a genius. He set down the net. I don't know anything about that log. Wasn't at the exhibition. Don't care much for history lectures. Was here working on my boat. Anyone see you? Several people, I expect. Harbor's busy at night. But I wasn't paying attention. To who was paying attention to me? He picked up a thermos, unscrewed the cap, and poured himself some coffee. He didn't offer her any. Why are you investigating? Thought that was the police's job. It is. I'm just curious. Curiosity killed the cat. But satisfaction brought it back. Nora finished. It was an old exchange, one they'd had many times when she was younger, and used to wander the docks, asking questions about everything. Roy's mouth might have twitched, the closest he ever came to a smile. You always were a curious child, he said. Used to drive your mother mad, the way you'd poke into everything. She worried you'd end up like... He stopped himself. Like who? Roy's expression closed off. No one. Old man rambling, he went back to his net. Nora tried a different approach. The founding families. Did you know them? The descendants, I mean. Everyone knows everyone in Harborview. You know that. But you've been on the water for 40 years. You must have seen things. The Sullivans, the Prescotts, the Hartfords, the Hartwells, Roy added pointedly. Your family's one of the founding families too, Nora. Or had you forgotten? She had, actually. It had never seemed important before. Just an old story, her mother mentioned occasionally. But now... What do you know about my family's history? She asked. Roy studied her for a long moment. Then he sighed, set down his net, and gestured to the boat. Come aboard. If we're going to have this conversation, we're doing it properly. The restless wave rocked gently as Nora climbed aboard. The deck was immaculately maintained. Everything in its place, everything shipshape. Roy led her to the small cabin where he poured her coffee. From a second thermos, without asking if she wanted it. They sat on the built-in benches, the cabin smelling of salt, and wood, and oil. Your great-great-grandfather, Roy began, was Jonathan Hartwell. He was one of the 5 founding families, made his money in shipping. Or, that's the official story. Truth is, a lot of that early money came from less savory sources, smuggling probably, maybe worse. Nora's coffee suddenly tasted bitter. All the founding families have skeletons, Roy continued. The Sullivans, the Prescotts, the Hartfords, the Hartwells, the Whitcombs. They built this town, but they built it on secrets. He met her eyes. That log? Bet it had some of those secrets written down. Captain's logs don't lie. Why are you telling me this? Because you're going to keep digging. Whether I tell you or not. Might as well give you the context. He took a long drink of his coffee. But Nora, be careful. Those old families, their descendants, they protect their legacies, sometimes fiercely. Are you warning me off? I'm warning you to watch your back. His tone was gruff but concerned. I knew your father. Good man. He'd want you safe. Nora swallowed hard. Her father had died when she was 15. She still missed him. Did my father know about these secrets? Don't know. Never asked. Roy stood, signaling the conversation was over. Now get off my boat. I've got work to do. She climbed back onto the dock, her mind spinning, with new information. Nora. Roy's voice stopped her. That young officer? He's in over his head. This isn't just about a theft. If I were you, I'd figure out what was in that log. That was worth stealing, because that's your real mystery. She nodded and headed back toward town, Roy's words echoing in her mind. The library was closed on Saturdays, but Nora knew Bea would be there anyway. She always was organizing, cataloging, making sure everything was perfect for Monday morning. The front door was locked, but Nora saw movement through the windows. She knocked. Bea appeared a moment later, looking surprised and wary. She unlocked the door, but did not fully open it. Nora, we're closed today. I know. I was hoping we could talk. About? The log. Your family. The founding families. Nora met her eyes directly. Bea, I know there's more to this than you said last night. For a moment, Bea's professional mask cracked, and Nora saw raw emotion underneath. Fear, guilt, and something else. Grief, maybe. Then Bea opened the door wider. Come in, but only for a few minutes. The library felt different with nobody in it. Larger, echoing. The books felt like silent witnesses. Bee led her to the reading area where they sat in 2 armchairs by the window, overlooking the village green. My great-great-grandmother was Eliza Sullivan. Bee began. She was Captain Samuel Crawford's wife. After he disappeared, she changed her name back to Sullivan and raised their children alone. The official story is that Captain Crawford was lost at sea. The real story... She paused. No one knows the real story. That's the problem. What do you mean? There were always rumors, Bee said softly, that he didn't disappear, that he ran away, or was driven away, or... She shook her head. My grandmother used to say, there was shame attached to our family name, but she wouldn't say why. Just that we owed it to Captain Crawford's memory, to be above reproach, to prove we were respectable. Is that why you became a librarian? Partly. Libraries are respectable, quiet, safe. Bee looked out the window. I've spent my whole life trying to live down a scandal. I don't even understand. And then that log shows up, and Dr. Webb is talking about Captain Crawford's final journey, and I thought, finally, I'd know the truth about my family. What was in the log, Bee? I don't know. I barely had time to read any of it before. She turned back to Nora, eyes glistening, before someone stole it. And now I never will know. The truth is gone again, just like it always is. Nora reached over and took Bee's hand. We'll find it. I promise. How? It could be anywhere by now. Because whoever took it didn't take it to destroy it, Nora reasoned. If they just wanted it gone, they would have burned it. They took it because they want what's in it, which means it still exists. Bee looked at her hopefully. You really think so? I do. Nora squeezed her hand. Bee, I need to ask you something difficult. Is there any chance your family might have taken it to protect your reputation, or... No. Bee's voice was firm. My mother and aunt were at the exhibition, yes. But they would never. They want the truth as much as I do. Maybe more. Okay, I believe you. And she did. Bee was many things, but she was not a liar. What about the other founding families? The Prescotts? The Hartfords? She stopped. My family. Was there anything in the log about the Hartwells? I don't know. I only read a few pages. Bee stood, pacing now. But Nora, if you're investigating this, you need to know something. Your family has secrets too. All the founding families do. That's what this is about. Protecting secrets. That should have stayed buried. Then maybe it's time they came to light, Nora said quietly. Bee looked at her, with something like admiration. You sound just like your father. My father knew about this? Your father was interested in history. He used to come here, research the old families, ask questions. Bee's expression was sad. He died before he found any answers. Maybe that's a warning. You should heed. The implication hung in the air between them. My father died in a car accident, Nora said. It was investigated. There was nothing suspicious about it. I know, Bee said. I'm sorry. I'm worried. For you. For all of us. This feels bigger than a simple theft, Nora. It feels like something that's been waiting to surface for a very long time. Nora left the library, feeling more unsettled than when she'd arrived. Back at the seaside page, Maeve had held down the fort admirably, A few customers browsed the shelves, and the tea room had a couple of occupied tables. Everything was peaceful, normal. Nora went straight upstairs, to her apartment above the shop. She had inherited the building from her grandmother. The bookshop downstairs, the cozy apartment upstairs. She had moved back to Harborview after her divorce, after her life in New York had fallen apart. Coming home had felt like failure at first. Now it felt like exactly where she needed to be. Her laptop sat on the small kitchen table. She opened it, made herself tea, and began to research. The Harborview Historical Society had digitized some records. She searched for Captain Samuel Crawford and found several references: ship manifests, trade records, a marriage certificate, but nothing about his disappearance. She tried Jonathan Hartwell next, her great-great-grandfather. More results appeared. He had been a prominent citizen, owned several businesses, and sat on the town council. But the records were oddly vague about how he had made his initial fortune. Trade was mentioned several times, but no details. Roy's words came back to her. Smuggling, probably. Maybe worse. She opened a new search tab and typed, Michael Chen disappearance, 1995, Harborview. A few news articles came up. Brief, factual. Local man, age 22, presumed drowned. No foul play suspected. Case closed. But Marcus had said Michael was acting strange before he disappeared. Said he had found something out. Nora stared at the screen, pieces of a puzzle she could not quite see yet. Her phone rang. Maeve. Nora, you need to come downstairs. Someone's here to see you. Who? Dr. Adrian Webb, the historian from last night. He says it's important. Dr. Adrian Webb looked even more disheveled than he had at the exhibition. His hair stuck up at odd angles, his glasses were smudged, and he clutched a worn leather portfolio, like it was a life preserver. Nora met him in the bookshop. Maeve had settled him in one of the reading chairs by the window and brought him tea he had not touched. Dr. Webb, Nora said, sitting across from him, what can I do for you? I've been thinking, he said, about the log, about what was in it, about why someone might have taken it. And? He leaned forward, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, despite the fact that they were alone. Captain Crawford's final entries mentioned something. He called the arrangement. He was vague about details. Captains often were, in case their logs were read by the wrong people. But the implication was clear. The founding families had made some kind of agreement, something that benefited all of them but required moral flexibility. You mean illegal activity. I mean morally questionable activity. That was nevertheless profitable. Dr. Webb pushed his glasses up. In 1823, there were many ways to make money quickly, if you were not overly concerned with legality. Smuggling was common, but there were other activities. The slave trade, for instance, though officially abolished, in the United States territories. Nora's stomach turned. You think the founding families of Harborview were involved in the slave trade? I think it's possible. Captain Crawford's entries suggested cargo that he was uncomfortable transporting. He wrote about human costs and sins that follow us home. The language was troubling. Did he name anyone specifically? He mentioned H and P and W, initials only. But given that the founding families were the Hartwells, Prescotts, and Whitcombs, along with the Sullivans, and Hartfords, Dr. Webb spread his hands. The conclusion is not difficult to draw. Nora felt like the floor had shifted under her. Why are you telling me this? Because you're a Hartwell. Because you're investigating. And because... He hesitated. Because Captain Crawford's final entry, the one dated the day before he disappeared, mentioned a threat. Someone had discovered the arrangement and was demanding payment to keep quiet. Crawford wrote that he feared for his life. He was being blackmailed? Or worse. The entry cut off mid-sentence. That's the last thing he ever wrote. They sat in silence for a moment. The afternoon light streamed through the windows. The bookshop was peaceful around them. The log proves that the founding families were criminals, Nora said slowly. That this town was built on something dark. That's why someone stole it. That's my theory. Dr. Webb agreed, though I cannot prove it. Without the log itself. Where is your copy of the entries? Your notes from examining it? His face fell. Stolen. My hotel room was broken into earlier. They took my laptop and my notebook, everything related to the log. I've filed a police report, but... He shrugged helplessly. Someone's very thorough, Nora murmured. Someone's very desperate, Dr. Webb corrected. Desperate enough to steal from the library and break into my hotel room. Perhaps desperate enough for worse if they feel cornered. It was a sobering thought. After Dr. Webb left, Nora sat alone in the bookshop, turning over everything she had learned. Marcus's brother disappeared 30 years ago, after finding something out. Her own father had been researching the founding families, before he died. Captain Crawford had been threatened, and then vanished. The log documented crimes committed 200 years ago, but someone living today cared enough to steal it. And one of the founding families mentioned in that log was her own. Nora pulled out her phone and opened a notes app. She began making a list. Questions. What was in the log specifically? About the Hartwells? Who knew Dr. Webb had copies of the entries? Why act now after the log sat in a private collection for decades? What was the connection between Michael Chen's disappearance and the founding families? Who benefits most from the log staying hidden? Suspects. B. Access. Family connection, but she seems genuinely upset. B's family. Protecting the Sullivan reputation? Other founding family descendants. Prescotts, Hartfords, Whitcombs. Unknown party. Someone with an old grudge or secret. What I know. The log contained evidence of criminal activity by founding families. Captain Crawford was threatened before disappearing. Multiple people wanted that information suppressed. Someone is acting now to keep it suppressed. What I need to find out. Who are the current descendants of the founding families? Who was at the exhibition with the knowledge to pull off the theft? Where would someone hide a historical document? She was so absorbed in her notes that she did not hear Maeve come up behind her until her friend spoke. That's quite a list. Nora jumped. How long have you been standing there? Long enough to see. You're well past the point of no return on this investigation. Maeve sat down beside her. Find anything useful? Too many questions, not enough answers. Nora set down her phone. But I'm starting to see a pattern. Maeve, do you know anything about the founding families? Their descendants? Maeve's expression became carefully neutral. Why would I? I've only been here 3 years. But you're observant. You notice things. I notice that you're chasing something dangerous. Maeve said quietly, and that you should probably leave it alone. That's the second time today. Someone's warned me off, Nora said, studying her friend. Why? Because I care about you. Because I know what it's like to have the past catch up with you. Maeve's voice was tight. Sometimes secrets are secret for a reason, Nora. Sometimes digging them up does more harm than good. There was something in Maeve's eyes. Pain, fear, memories of whatever had brought her to Harborview in the first place. Nora wanted to ask, to press, to understand. But Maeve stood, before she could. I should check on the tea room. Saturday evening crowd will be here soon. She left. Before Nora could respond, that evening, after the shop had closed, and Maeve had gone home, Nora returned to her research. She had been thinking about Captain Crawford's disappearance. The official story was that he had been lost at sea, but Dr. Webb's description of the final log entry suggested otherwise. Crawford had been afraid, threatened, on land. She pulled up the digitized historical records again and searched for Captain Samuel Crawford death, 1823. The newspaper obituary was brief. Captain Samuel Crawford, master of the merchant vessel, restless spirit, lost at sea during storm, October 1823. Survived by wife Eliza and 3 children. Memorial service to be held at Presbyterian Church. Lost at sea during a storm. But Dr. Webb had said, the log entries stopped the day before Crawford disappeared, and that final entry mentioned a threat on land. She searched for weather records from October 18th, 23. The Historical Society had some records transcribed from old journals and almanacs. October 18th, 23. Had been unusually calm, no storms reported anywhere near the New England coast. Nora sat back, her heart pounding. Captain Crawford had not been lost in a storm. The official story was a lie, which meant his disappearance was not an accident, which meant someone had killed him or driven him away and then covered it up. And if that was true, about Captain Crawford, she pulled up the articles about Michael Chen again. Presumed drowned, no foul play suspected. She searched for weather records from the date of Michael's disappearance. Clear skies, calm waters, a 22-year-old experienced swimmer, disappearing on a perfect night. 2 disappearances, 200 years apart, both involving the water, both officially ruled accidents, both occurring after the victim had discovered something dangerous. Nora's phone rang, making her jump. Unknown number. Hello? Miss Hartwell? The voice was male, older, unfamiliar. I understand you've been asking questions about the founding families. Who is this? A friend. Someone who knows the truth about what happened. A pause. Meet me tomorrow morning at the old lighthouse, 6 a.m. Come alone. I'll tell you everything. Why should I? But the line went dead. Nora stared at her phone, her pulse racing. This was either a breakthrough or a trap. Probably both. She thought about calling Lucas, about reporting this properly the way she had promised. But Lucas would tell her not to go. He would insist on handling it officially, which would scare off whoever had called. and Nora needed answers. She looked at her notes again, at the questions that had multiplied, rather than diminished, at the pattern of disappearances and lies, stretching back 200 years. Tomorrow morning, at the lighthouse, alone, against every instinct, against all common sense, she knew she was going to go. Outside her window, the real lighthouse beam swept across the harbor, steady, rhythmic. A beacon that had guided ships safely for 2 centuries. Or a warning that some secrets were too dangerous to uncover. Nora did not sleep well that night. Every time she drifted off, she dreamed of Captain Crawford's final log entry, the words cutting off mid-sentence, of Michael Chen disappearing into calm waters, of her own father asking questions he never got answered. At 5 a.m., she gave up trying to sleep. She dressed in jeans and a warm sweater, made coffee. She barely tasted and left a note for Maeve. Out early for walk. Back by opening. Don't worry. Maeve would definitely worry, but at least she would know where to start looking if something went wrong. At 5:45, Nora locked the shop door behind her and started toward the lighthouse. The town was still mostly asleep. A few lights glowed in windows, where early risers were starting their days. The bakery lights were on, but the streets were quiet, peaceful. The walk to the lighthouse took 15 minutes, along the coastal path. The morning was cold, fog rolling in off the water, making the beam of light above seem to float in mid-air. The old lighthouse was not used anymore. The new automated one had been built 50 years ago, on the opposite side of the harbor. This one stood empty, locked up, officially a historical landmark, practically abandoned. Nora reached the base at exactly 6 a.m. No one was there. She waited, the fog dampening her hair, the sound of waves on rocks, the only noise. Minutes passed. "Hello?" she called out. "I'm here. I came alone, like you asked." Nothing. She waited another 5 minutes, then 10. Whoever had called was not coming. Either they had changed their mind, or it had been a prank, or it had been a trap after all, and she had walked right into it. Nora turned to head back toward town. That was when she saw it. Tucked into a crack, in the lighthouse foundation, protected from the weather, by a piece of oilcloth, was a package. She pulled it out carefully. Inside the oilcloth was a manila envelope, old, water-stained. And inside the envelope, written in careful 19th century script, were pages from a captain's log. Not the whole log, just 5 pages, carefully selected. She unfolded them with trembling hands. The first page was dated October 12, 1823. The arrangement has been discovered. H and P demand I keep silent, but I cannot. The souls we condemned haunt me still. I will go to the authorities regardless of the cost. The second page, October 13th. They have threatened my family. I do not know what to do. The truth must come out, but at what price? The third page, October 14th. I have hidden copies of the cargo manifests. If anything should happen to me, let them be found, and let justice be served. God forgive us all for what we did. The fourth page was covered in lists, names, dates, payments, cargo manifests exactly as Crawford had mentioned. And the fifth page made Nora's blood run cold. It was a letter dated last year, written in modern handwriting. The log must be destroyed. We cannot let the truth come out. The families have agreed. Take care of it quietly. It was unsigned. But it was paper-clipped to a photocopy of a newspaper article from 30 years ago. Local man disappears at harbor. Michael Chen, 22, presumed drowned. And in the margin, in the same modern handwriting, he found out. Couldn't be helped. Next time, be more careful. Nora's hands shook as she carefully folded the pages back into the envelope. Someone had killed Michael Chen. Someone was willing to kill, to keep these secrets buried. And someone had just given her the evidence. But who and why? Behind her, in the fog, she heard footsteps. She spun around. A figure approached, through the mist. Thank you for spending this time in Harborview Cove. As secrets begin to surface, and the past casts a longer shadow, Nora's search for answers is only just beginning. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please like this video and subscribe to continue the mystery with us. Episode 3 will be waiting for you soon, when an early morning meeting changes everything. Until then, rest well, sleep peacefully, and I'll see you next time in Harborview Cove.